and we don't know what our purpose is? The purpose of life is to align the finite with the infinite. What does atheism have to offer?
I think that the more secularized society is superior because it creates space for all of those people to exist together in a system that is functional. There are, some 2 billion Muslims, I think, on the planet. For all the talk I hear of Islam coming from one book, from one word that is unchanged and unaltered, I look to the Palestinian situation and I wonder, where is Islam, or where are the Muslims?
You created these wars. You bombed these people. They're running for their life. If you don't want asylum seekers and refugees in these European countries, then don't create wars in those countries. We are here because they were there. That's the reality of the situation.
Dalam debat di Oxford Union, cendekiawan Muslim asal Inggris, Mohammed Hijab, berhadapan dengan tokoh ateis dari Amerika Serikat, Steven Donnel, yang dikenal dengan nama online, Destiny.
Debat Oxford Union adalah debat formal yang telah menjadi tradisi sejak 1823. Debat antara Mohammed Hijab dan Destiny kali ini membahas Islam, ateisme, dan imigrasi.
There's one thing we can all agree on, that the universe is regular, stable, uniform, the extent to which it allows life to exist within it. From every small atom to the largest of celestial spheres, we see incredible goal-directedness within the cosmos. Now the question is, what is the best explanation for that? Is it a source of knowledge? Or is it a lack thereof? Did something come from nothing? Is it conceivable, intelligible, or plausible for something to come from nothing? That the universe came from nothing? Did the universe generate and cause itself? Well, to suggest that the universe was generated or caused itself is tantamount to saying that a mother gave birth to herself. And to suggest that there's more than one ultimate source of being, more than one necessary existence, is tantamount to saying that you can have more than one mother to one sole child. Therefore, it is clear that monotheism, the idea of one source, that is the foundation for everything that exists, is the only reasonable conclusion. Another question that must be asked is, what is the purpose of life? Imagine going into work. You don't know who your boss is. You don't know what your role is. You don't know what you're doing there. But here we are, in the career of life, and we don't know what our purpose is. The purpose of life is to align the finite with the infinite. The purpose of life is to submit to the lawgiver. The purpose of life is to submit to the ultimate source of all creation. That's why prophets and messengers were sent aforetime. Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and for us, the final prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these prophets came to expound on this truth, to tell people to submit to God. And they came with an evidence for their prophethood. As for the Prophet Muhammad, his evidence is that he came with a preserved religion. The Quran is preserved in a way that no other ancient book is. There's a falsification test within the Quran, challenging humanity to find a contradiction within it, challenging humanity to try and produce a chapter like it. And the Prophet of Islam made predictions that were so frequent and so precise that no other figure in human history made them. For example, he told us that the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire would both fall to the Muslims. Now, according to Barnaby Rogerson, who is a historian, non-Muslim historian, he said that the similitude of the Arabs at that time taking over the Persian and Roman Empire is the same as Eskimos taking over Russia and America. Imagine what kind of a wild prediction this is. The question is, what does atheism have to offer? Atheism has no explanatory force whatsoever. Atheism is a negation. Atheism has no ontological status. Atheism cannot describe or explain morality, rationality, consciousness. Atheism brings nothing to the table. With that, I conclude. Wassalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Pernyataan pembuka dari Mohammed Hijab tentang ateisme ini ditanggapi Destiny dengan penekanan bahwa sekularisme merupakan fondasi kehidupan saat ini. Menurutnya, sistem sekuler lebih unggul dibanding sistem agama.
Any individual religious system because it allows for all these different viewpoints to come together. I think that the more secularized society is superior because it creates space for all of those people to exist together in a system that is functional. But when it comes time to arguing those things to other religious people, the last I checked, I don't think that Islam or Christianity or Judaism have settled their disagreements between who is the one true religion, Abrahamically, or any of the other number of religions that people choose from. Yeah, the idea of being able to enforce your religious ideology or your dogma on some particular group of people, I think is an idea that was tried in the past and hasn't produced the societies that have the most flourishing today, which I would say are the ones that are more secular and do allow for more different points of view.
Well, I mean, Destiny mentions that secularism is superior to religion. But secularism couldn't exist without it, because secularism is by definition a separation between church and state. So how can you have secularism without the church? You would just have something else. So it can't be superior to it because it incorporates it into its worldview. The question is, as an atheist who believes that we are essentially atoms whizzing around, this is the physicalist, this is the materialist assumption. How can you get from that to objective morality in the first place? How can you ascertain that liberalism is the superior ideology from first principles, from a scientific or mathematical perspective? You can't do that. He mentions intolerance. Let's go to this straight away, actually. This is a man who supports a genocide. This is a man who was going to the IDF, telling the IDF that, you know, when you're doing your atrocities, make sure you hide them and don't take pictures of them. You're going to talk to us about this? You're going to be sanctimonious and talk about minority rights? What minorities are you talking about? The minorities that you prefer, that the white man prefers, that the colonialists prefer. That's the minorities that you're... When it comes to the Palestinians, no, kill them. You're actually telling people to kill them. This is absolutely diabolical.
There are, some 2 billion Muslims, I think, on the planet. For all the talk I hear of Islam coming from one book, from one word that is unchanged and unaltered, I look to the Palestinian situation and I wonder, where is Islam, or where are the Muslims? The idea that there is some foundational religion here that all of these different people of the same belief system buy into enough to actually stand up for and defend and support their fellow Muslim brother doesn't seem to be there. So one of the most fatal flaws that I find people who are religious commit is this flaw of thinking they stand on firmer ground than they actually do.
He says, where are the Muslims? That's a good question, and I agree with him on that, actually. But there's a distinction to be made between Muslims and Islam. The discussion here is not about Muslims, it's about Islam. And then he says, okay, well, Western countries are doing a good job on minorities. I mean, liberalism coexisted with colonialism. You must understand this. You cannot look at this time in history and not realize that J.S. Mill was somebody who was actually advising his government how to use racism and supremacy against the colonial empire. There has been a relationship between racism on the one hand and colonialism on the other, and it's very well known. You can be an atheist communist. You can be an atheist Nazi. You can be an atheist Zionist, as you are. As you are. He's importing liberalism into the discussion to save atheism. Tell me how you can get to objective morality from atheism. Tell me how you can get to atoms whizzing around, carbon, which we are, from is to ought, as David Hume would put it. Otherwise, you'd be doing the naturalistic fallacy.
So I think at the end of the day, you can talk about the atoms whizzing by, we can talk about the different ways that we think we've proven our God. But again, there's been no progress made on this conversation in the thousands of years that people have debated religion. I think that one of the fatal flaws, again, of religious people is that they stand on, or they think they stand on firmer ground than they actually do. You say that we're not talking about Muslims, we're just talking about Islam. Different people have different interpretations of what Islam means. When it comes to deciding, whether a society can have a secular foundation, you can have this conversation of, well, philosophically, you can't connect A to B and B to C and C to D and everything else, but somehow secular societies seem to exist. The idea that Islam provides some special protection or some special way to run a society that would be superior in terms of producing better outcomes for the people involved, where are those countries? That would be my big question.
But the fact of the matter is this. He says Muslim countries, that's his big question. Where are the Muslim countries? I agree with you. Muslim countries are not following Islam. This is the answer to your question. They are not following. Muslim countries are not following. Look at the Palestine issue. There are non-Muslim countries who have done a better job than the Muslim countries with the Palestine issue. They've acted more Islamic than the Muslim countries have. I agree with this criticism. We are not talking about that. As he's talking about execution and this and that. How dare you talk about execution? You are speaking to the IDF, telling them, if you're going to commit atrocities, don't bring your phone out. You are in no position whatsoever to talk about rights to us today. No position. Zero.
How could you have a foundation to a society that is some kind of religion that also allots for other religions to practice themselves in identical ways? When religions tend to be mutually exclusive, especially the Abrahamic ones, when they say that my holy book, my scripture, my God, my interpretation is the correct one, how do you truly have a society where you allow for other people
Kayaknya
to
dia
practice
perlu
their
datang ke
religious beliefs?
Indonesia nih.
I challenge you, I'm curious, in your worldview, in the ideal Islamic country, would you allow people to draw pictures of the Prophet? Would you allow people to practice whatever religion they want?
He asked me a series of questions and he said that, would you allow the drawing of the Prophet? Would you allow this? Would you allow that? In the same way as liberal societies. Why should it be the same way? You haven't proven liberalism is true, and you haven't proven that atheism is true. So, yes, the Muslim countries would actually ban something like that. And that is an inhibition to the free speech people like you, atheist morality would bring to the table. Child banned in the Muslim countries, for example. I'm asking you, how do you connect atheist morality with liberalism? There is no answer, there's no connection.
Without having the foundation as some secular system, without being able to point to laws, without being able to point to a system of governance that doesn't originate from some holy book, I don't know how you can say that a liberal society, one that allows for all religions to practice equally, isn't necessarily a society that doesn't take a normative position on what religion is true or what religion is false. If you think that there is a better way to build a country with an Islamic foundation, where are these countries? It seems like they fell in the past, they haven't emerged again. If you're telling me that atheism is not the model or is not the foundation for a secular liberal society that allows for other religions to practice equally, well then tell me, what is the religious foundation for that society? We can look, for instance, to children born today. That doesn't involve any religious aspect. It doesn't involve a God. It doesn't involve anything else. We know the process by how that works. We don't need religion right now to explain the things that are happening in society. For all the predictions that Mohammed or anybody else supposedly made about things in society, I don't see his name on any research papers. I haven't seen him publish anything in Nature or Science Weekly. I don't really know what his predictions are doing that are relevant today. I know that, he was the head of a bunch of caliphates or started these that eventually fell and no longer exist.
Sayangnya, pada bagian ini Mohammed Hijab tak berkesempatan menanggapi, karena moderator mengganti topik menjadi imigrasi.
Harkening back to the last subject, I like the concept of liberalism as a secular government because as long as we share some core values that we're all working and building towards, some concept of a nation that we're working and building towards, liberalism provides a lot of different paths to get there. I think that when you have people that are proponents of immigration, I think that it's good to take a step back sometimes and think, well, what do we want our country to look like? What kind of people should we want to come here? And that doesn't just mean people that look or think like us. It means people that are building towards some kind of common goal. And I think for people that are harshly critical of immigration, I think it's good for them to ask the same question. Do I want nobody coming here because they don't look like me or because they don't think exactly like me? And what kind of restrictions would I draw on immigrants coming here that I wouldn't also restrict on my own countrymen? I notice sometimes in the United States, for instance, that a lot of conservatives will talk about how we want to restrict immigration from people that have A, B, and C or X, Y, and Z thoughts that they feel like aren't aligned with American values. But I would point to a lot of conservatives in the United States and I would say that your disregard for rule of law or the Constitution doesn't align with our values.
People are talking about grooming gangs, unemployment, criminality, and these kind of things vis-a-vis the Muslim population. But when was the last time you heard that despite a 6% population, Muslims are 6% of this country, that they constitute 22%, according to Christie Foundation, NHS Foundation, of the medical professionals in the NHS. In fact, 51% of the NHS are comprised of people who are immigrants or the sons of immigrants. If you remove that, you will have a crisis so large, it will be as if Britain went into war. You cannot. People have this discussion about immigration. They disregard the fact, for example, that Muslims, once again, are 4 times, according to Charity UK, more likely to give to charity than their non-Muslim counterpart. Muslims contribute 70 billion per year to the UK economy, which is equivalent to Birmingham and Manchester combined, the output of those two things. Now, if you remove all those contributions, you will have a cascading impact in Britain that is so far-reaching that it will dent the economy and it will bring death and destruction upon the people of Britain. The question isn't about, oh, we can have this discussion about immigration. You need us. You need the immigrants. Don't speak in a position of privilege as if we can't have it. You actually need the immigrants. You're in a position where you are dependent on immigrants. This country is dependent on immigrants and the sons of immigrants. If you support a genocide in Palestine, you support it, and people then run away from Palestine to try to come to the West, then you are the architects of your own complaints. You are creating the conditions of your own complaints. In other words, if the Western powers decide to go into these different countries, like Iraq, like Afghanistan, like Syria, like Libya, like Palestine, or help those who are doing it, and then those people that start fleeing and coming to Europe, you created this issue. So what do you want to do with these people? You either bomb them when they're there, when they try and run away, you say no to them as well. Sorry to say, what kind of a situation is this? Unemployment. According to the BBC, if you have a Muslim name, you're 3 times less likely to be employed by the same job for the same position. Yes, it's true, there are some legitimate concerns with immigration. There are legitimate concerns with minority groups. I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, the way forward is there to be a reciprocity between the government or the dominant population and these minority groups. And there needs to be a reduction to the barriers of discrimination.
I think that one of the big mistakes that people have made is in allowing immigrants to come up and improve your economy. The economy improving is not the same thing as life for an individual improving. And sometimes there are ways to bring in immigrants to a country where the overall economy improves, but the improvement is slight over the entire economy, but the destruction to parts of the economy are very concentrated and are very noticed. And especially in the United States, we have issues along our manufacturing sector where you can see concentrated damage that different types of immigration have caused. While the entire country might benefit, the people that are in those damaged sectors will obviously feel like they've been abandoned by their nation, by their country, and I think there's a legitimate grievance there that should be addressed.
In the UK and in Western Europe, the issue is that it's different to the way it happened in the United States. When the United States people brought people in for immigration, they had a more select criterion. Okay, they brought in middle-class people. So the point is, the immigration thing has missed the colonial aspect. Britain's history with colonialism meant that it called the people from ex-colonies to come into Britain as unskilled labor after the World War in order to fix their country. They can't just do that and then tell them to leave afterwards. And hence, the reason why you've got people from Pakistan or from Jamaica or from whatever, India, in England, is because they were ex-colonies and that these people were used as unskilled labor. And because they're in that socioeconomic bracket, they will be more likely in some areas to commit certain crimes or to be unemployed just by virtue of socioeconomics. What's going on in someone's religion or someone's race on the other is there is no connection. And the connection is actually a socioeconomic one. The point is, it's about who gets to benefit. That's really the bottom line, isn't it? If Europeans get to benefit, it's okay, no problem. There's no questions asked. You can even build settlements. No problem. You can even steal someone's home. If you're a European Jewish immigrant going into Palestine, immigration is fine. But if you're someone coming into the UK, no, there's a discussion about expectations now, actually. If you're seeking asylum, are you? What do you mean seeking asylum? You created these wars. You bomb these people. They're running for their life. And before you come in, tell us what you're going to bring to the table. Is this a joke? Is this some kind of is this satire? This is pathetic, frankly. No argument has been given. If you don't want asylum seekers and refugees in these European countries, then don't create wars in those countries. We are here because they were there. That's the reality of the situation. Prevention is better than cure. Don't create a disaster and then ask, why is it happening? You created it with your own hands.
Jangan lupa like dan subscribe, karena banyak diskusi dan debat seperti ini yang dapat Anda saksikan untuk memperluas wawasan. Wassalamualaikum.